What is going on, guys? Broken Eyes coming at you today with a brand new video. Now, I'm just going to say real quick, if you guys like the video or anything like that, I'm not going to ask you for anything, but if you guys like the video, maybe I'll do another one and kind of have it a bit more, professional in a way. Because at the minute, this is not going to be professional. This is just going to be me rambling about the timeline, as you can tell from the thumbnail or whatever. So, I'm going to try and discuss the Yu-Gi-Oh timeline, even though it's so confusing and it's never actually been confirmed or anything, but I feel like this would be one of kind of the way I see it. Now, the fact that time travel is involved in this is the reason everything keeps changing and nothing is actually set in stone, the fact that that keeps happening or whatever. So, I'm going to explain really quick Yu-Gi-Oh! So, Yu-Gi-Oh! Basically, the only reason he was special was he was the reincarnation of a soul called Pharaoh or a Tem, and basically he lived out his life with Kaiba and dueled and all of. They had like 8 series or something, like Wake of the Dragon, Battle City, loads of series and stuff. Everybody knows that. Then there was a good few movies. The first movie, let's say, happened, which was the one against Anubis. That's fine. Then there was one with time travel, which was Bonds Beyond Time. Now that one is where it gets a little bit confusing. So I'll go over that maybe a bit later. Then there was the final movie, which was the best one, and that one is kind of like what I would imagine as a new kind of timeline. So I don't want to waffle too much. I kind of want to just explain. Like, everybody knows Yugi, everybody knows he met Jade in his older years. Now, I think Bonds Beyond Time happened first. He knew Jaden, and then when the very first episode of Yu-Gi-Oh! GX happened, when Jaden bumped into him, he knew Jaden and he kind of knew what he needed to give him at the time. So it wasn't like a big thing, like, you know, it was kind of like he knew the kid, he wanted to duel him or whatever, but he wouldn't say anything about it because, you know, and obviously Yugi was a lot older in his age. He wasn't the kid Yugi, he was actually like he is when he's a Tem or whatever, because he's very young in the main series or whatever, and he gets older and looks like that, the picture you're seeing now. So yeah, so let's say all that happened. Trying to think, do I need to mention anything? Look, if there's anything I forget to mention or whatever, I'll go back. So let's say this is the vocal point of all of the time travel lapses or whatever. So Yu-Gi-Oh! Would be the first, of course, the original series. He would be everything we're going to base off today or whatever. So the next series we go to is Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. So Yu-Gi-Oh! GX happens straight after the first series. The reason we know this is because he meets Yugi a little bit older. On the very first episode, he bumps into him and Yugi gives him the Kribo card, and Yugi like smiles as if like he knows or whatever. So that's what I'm getting off Bonds Beyond Time, which is, whoever hasn't watched Bonds Beyond Time, a guy from the future called Paradox came back in time and stole Yusei Fudo's Stardust Dragon, went back and took all of GX. He took Cyber End Dragon and Rainbow Dragon, and then Yusei had to come back. He brought Jaden and came back because the guy Paradox was going to kill Pegasus, who was the creator of Duel Monsters in the first season, if anybody remembers. And he went to go kill him, basically, to stop Duel Monsters from ever happening, because he comes from like a post-apocalyptic future. Now, that post-apocalyptic future, I still believe, happens or will happen. It's like a Judgment Day. It's bound to happen at some stage, and every time they stop it and bring it back, a new way it comes across. So I'm going to go through that as well eventually, but it seems like that is always going to happen. A post-apocalyptic future is bound to happen in the future, except for these heroes that we keep getting, like Jaden and Yugi and all, stops it, prevents it, and then it happens again, and they need a new protagonist to change it again. So Yu-Gi GX starts off exactly straight after Yu-Gi-Oh! The original series, and his timeline goes perfectly. Nothing changes except for straight after GX, Bonds Beyond Time happened when Jaden's a little bit older, and he has the Yubel spirit, and he has the Professor Banner as his spirits and stuff, and Winkaribo and Neos and all. That's how we know that it's after GX. So there's no problem so far. We're pretty much on the right line. So it goes Yu-Gi-Oh! Original Series and Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, right? Then when this is how it gets kind of a little bit confusing because of the reason the next series, which is Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds, gets a little bit confusing is because of time travel. Now, everything was going fine, everything was going smoothly until time travel was involved. So, Yusuf Fudo is involved. He basically he lived out his life or whatever. He's from the same city as Yugi Moto, which is Domino City, except for it's like being a post-apocalyptic future because there's something in the series that was like an explosion, Inner D or something it's called. Anyway, so apparently this energy source or whatever that was destroying caused the future to go destructive or whatever. So the future in that made the humans or normal people made machines. The machines came to life, realistic, and started to destroy the world, basically, the mech lords or whatever as they call them. So I believe this could be still a very, very possible future. Now obviously Yusei has changed the future because as soon as I can't remember what Iliaster was the secret organization that can travel through time. They're from the post-apocalyptic future. The leader of it is Zone, and one of the guys, Paradox, was a member of that. He's the one that traveled back in time to kill Pegasus. He obviously failed because of these three protagonists or whatever. So we're still 1, 2, 3. Yu-Gi-Oh! GX and then 5D. So we're fine with that. There's no confusion in the thing. So what I have put into place is I'm going to explain something real quick, maybe just a theory or whatever. So the fact that Kaiba and Yugi and Joey and all got cards later on down the line, they got kind of a revamp cards of their own. Basically they gave Yugi Xyz monsters like the Paladin, or what was it called? I can't remember the card, but it was like a magician, Xyz monster that works with Ebon Illusion Magician or something like that. And they gave Kaiba Synchro monsters. Now, I believe this to be a good kind of like an explanation as to the anime, how the characters ended up. So, what I believe is if anybody has watched the Dark Side of Dimensions, this gives us a big hint as well. At the end of Dark Side Dimensions, Yugi Moto talks to all his friends and says, after everything has happened, he's like, "What?" Everybody's asking him, "What's next for you, Yugi?" And he just says, "I want to move away. I want to create a game that's my own. I want to go make a legacy for myself somewhere else. I don't want to be a new Domino anymore," kind of thing. Teia's going away. Joey's going to be a big time duelist or whatever. And if you look at his cards are actually very, very powerful and fusion based. With like Red Eye / Dragon and stuff like that, and I mean it's very possible he did become an all-time big time duelist or whatever. So all we know of Kaiba is the fact that he created the Yu-Gi-Oh! GX academies, and he was the creator or the leader of the GX academies. So he was obviously going places. He's in charge of a multi-billion-dollar company, and it's very possible that he created the motorbikes and stuff like that because he, as you remember, he's creating constant duel things. Like he wants to make a new way of dueling. He wants to make new stuff. So I'm nearly 100% sure that he was the one to probably make or introduce the D wheels, because it just makes sense. And the fact that his blue eyes have synchro monsters, it makes sense that he would have spurred on that. Now, and another thing was, well, I may explain in the Dark Side Dimensions. For those of you who haven't watched it, this is probably going to be a spoiler of the ending, but basically, so you've been warned. Basically, in the end of Dark Side of Dimensions, something very, very cool happens, I think. So Kaiba remakes the Millennium Puzzle. It's a big thing to get the Millennium Puzzle or whatever. He remakes it, and he finds a way to kind of like Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains his mind back in time to where the Pharaoh is, where he can duel the Pharaoh and talk to the Pharaoh and learn. And I believe at some stage, he dueled until he got older or whatever, and he kind of is like, you can only duel the Pharaoh so much and lose so much before you're kind of like, well, I'm going to have to do something new. So I believe that after that, he probably was, if the Pharaoh was real, let's say, or he actually did find a way to not just recreate the Pharaoh, but to actually talk to the Pharaoh. Let's just say he talked to the Pharaoh, and he was talking to him, and the Pharaoh was kind of like, look, maybe you should try to understand your past finally. Maybe I can help with that, and we can understand your past. So maybe it showed him and his former self, because Kaiba's a reincarnation of a guy that fought the Atem as well, that became the leader of Egypt after. I'm not sure, but basically he had a woman that he was in love with, and the woman was possessed by the Blue Eyes White Dragon spirit, and that's why Kaiba has such a connection with Blue Eyes, because it's after this maiden with Eyes of Blue is basically the card of this woman, and it's a tuner monster. So it makes sense that straight after he went back and talked to Atem, he learned about his past and he learned about this. Then he went back into the normal time and created these cards, these tuner cards of these white-haired people that are like spirits of the Blue Eyes that help him special summon the Blue Eyes. These are tuner monsters as well, so it helped them use synchro summon, and eventually that's how it happens. It just makes sense that that's the gradual way the future would have happened for him. In doing so, he created Maiden with Eyes of Blue, he created tuner monster, which means he created synchro monsters, in which case he would be a part of 5Ds, which we kind of know because of the thing, right? So you're going to ask, where did Yugi go, or whatever, but I'm going to explain that now in a second as well. So the next thing I want to explain is Iliaster. Now this is a big thing. The reason 5Ds is taking so long is because there's time travel, so it's going to mess things up a little bit. So Iliaster was a group of a few people, okay? So let's just say in the future, whatever, this is another theory video I was thinking about doing before as well, but in the future, Zone is the leader. Now Zone is a guy who looks exactly like Yusei Fudo, and he's from the future. He would have been the protagonist of the future, and he failed. He tried to use Yusei's deck. He tried to look at a person in the past and copy off them because they were so iconic back in the day, which is what he did, and that was why Zone failed. Now, I kind of was looking at Zone and the fact that he looks like Yusei, and fair enough, I'll talk about that in a minute. But all the characters he had, the friends and all, and it makes sense that if the character I think it is, so I'm just going to go to the next series. Yuma Tsukumo. He has the same hair, pretty much. If you're looking at it, I mean, if he was older, he'd have the same spikes in the back of his head. Now, not the red parts, of course, but the fact that he has, I don't know. I see a resemblance, a small bit of resemblance. The fact that Zone could be Yuma Tsukumo of a post-apocalyptic future. Because Yuma always needed his friends. And if he never had his friends or never had Astral, he would have got nowhere. He wasn't the best duelist. He's probably the weaker duelist out of all of them, I would say. Just based on the dueling. If not for Yuma, or if not for Astral, he would have lost. Like, Yugi had a Tem, fair enough. And if he didn't have a Tem, he still won. Yugi is still the Duel Monsters champion or whatever. He even beat a Tem, so he didn't need it. And I know Yuma beat Astral as well eventually. But it would make sense if Astral wasn't in it. If there was no Astral, he could have possibly become Zone. Now that's obviously a different theory altogether. But let's just say Iliaster happened, right? What happened was Yusei Fudo changed the future by beating Iliaster, and he was going to change the future for the better. In which case, they kind of, I don't know. I'm just saying, there's that kind of stuff. Now, there's another possibility that this takes place around the same time Zone would have taken place. But let's say Yugi Moto went to Heartland, and that's where he created his games, and he created the Divisor, or was a part of the Divisor, and it would make sense because there's a character, the old guy, Ryuko, I can't remember his name. It's an old guy, but he has basically all these stone statue monsters of Dark Magician and all that kind of stuff. And one more thing I want to point out, sorry, I'm going off on a tangent here, but the synchro monsters, they have no XC monsters. But they do have fusion monsters, which mean there would be a link connection with them. And the same with the Xyz. The Xyz have no synchro monsters, but they have fusion monsters, which could mean that Yugi had went to a brand new place to make his game. Okay? Instead, he went to Heartland. He could have made new games, but he actually created a new type of monster, XC monsters. He could have been a big part in creating XC monsters. He could have talked to Kaiba at some stage and been a part of his company and helped create, sorry about that, he could have helped create some type of card or something like that, and that would create the Ebon Illusion Magician or whatever. Now I know that's a big jump, but Yugi never wanted, he loved being champion, but he never wanted that kind of fame. He was never like Kaiba. Kaiba needed that fame. He never needed it. He could have went to live out the rest of his life in Heartland and teach other people how to duel. And he could have even given his cards or shown his cards to the Ryugu, the old guy with all the Dark Magician cards and stuff like that. And he could have like told him all about his stories and made Yuma, when Yuma met this old dude, he could have like shown all the like being the taught by Yugi. So this is how Yuma became better, obviously. So Yugi would have lived out his life in Heartland, and they would have like further robotics. Now, the problem with this is, as you can know, in the post-apocalyptic future, it's taken over by robots, by these mech lords. Now, in Yuma's world, there is a very high advancement in robots, and even they do have. There's a character called Visor, which has this D-wheel. That's a long, like spear-looking thing, and there's a character in Zexal. This series that has a D-wheel very similar. A shark has a motorbike that is very similar. So it looked like Visor is one of the characters from Millennium. I think his name is Bruno or something. But he was from the future originally. I think he's an android or something anyway. But the bikes look the same. You can look it up. The bikes, his D-wheel, Visor's D-wheel, look it up, is pretty much the same as Shark's motorbike in the 5Ds or Zexal. So yeah, so it's very, very possible that Yuma could have turned out to be Zone with a new set of friends that weren't as good and evil, and Paradox looks a lot like Kite. Bruno could have been the shark type of thing. Now I know obviously Shark is Nash, which was a character from the past that was brought back because of the Baryons or whatever, so he wouldn't actually be alive, hence why we didn't see him in Arc V either. But yeah, so that's how it could have happened. I believe that Yuma Tsukumo is a little bit ahead of 5Ds, if not the same timeline. It's basically like, I feel like Yugi would be dead and gone, whereas in 5Ds, Kaiba could be just dead and gone as well, or maybe he's still alive as an old man, still creating cards and stuff. That's a very possibility. But I feel like because he's younger, it's a little bit after. I feel like they could be based around the exact same time as each other, except for one's in Heartland and one's in Domino. And that's why the two cards, the Xyz and Synchros, never crossed over, because they're only two cards. It's a possibility. It is a possibility. Hence why Zexal is a lot like the original series. The fact that it's going over a lot of stuff like Yugi. The fact that like his father was an archaeologist, and there's a lot of like ancient digs and stuff, and they found a new world and Baryons and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so so far we're pretty okay with the timeline. I mean, sorry, I keep doing that. These are just pictures, by the way. So it goes normal Yu-Gi-Oh, Yu-Gi-Oh GX, 5Ds, and then a little bit after Zexal, I believe, in a whole different place. And that's why Synchros wouldn't be in it, the new place, because they're such far apart from each other. Like, I don't know, what's far apart from each other? I mean, I don't know. I'm not sure what way the world actually works. They don't have, like, they have New Domino and they have Heartland. I'm pretty sure that's all we know, apart from, like, supernatural, astral planes and stuff. But yeah, so that's what we know so far, and I believe that's a very big possibility. I mean, they could easily explain that this character would have been Zone if he turned evil and lost all his friends and stuff, because Yuma needs his friends. If Yuma had no friends, he would have turned dark. He's just so chipper and a happy kid because of all his friends. But if his friends were destroyed by these robots and stuff, he would get sick and he would get angry, and he'd do everything he possibly could to get back his friends. This is the character, and Zone seems to be the exact same. Which would make sense for him to kind of like go back, like as he gets older, go back in time, and he would have known about Yusei and stuff, and there would be no, there would not been creating of Xyz monsters, as well as the dark side dimensions changing the future or whatever, again for Yugi to actually be a part of it. So far we're good. Let's get on to this one then. So this one is Arc V, one of my favourites. So this is basically like, this is kind of explaining, I feel like this explains why the robots were necessary. Okay, so the future in the post-apocalyptic future, whatever. So basically, after Yuma came about and Astral was about, it saved the world. The post-apocalyptic future took many more years to come about. So I believe after this, Yuma might have lived out his days. He could have been still alive. I wish we kind of seen him in Arc V, even like when Zark, I'll explain Zark, but even if he was like an old man talking to Zark, I would have loved that. That would explain the timeline completely perfect. It just would have. So yeah. So anyway, so let's talk about 5Ds. So 5Ds is a bit of a cluster poke. I won't say the actual word. But, okay, so this follows the timeline, let's say, back in New Domino City, after 5Ds, after Zexal, there was a character named Zark. Now, Zark was a spiritual guy, a protagonist, the winner. He was one of the best duelists in the world at the time. He would have been the protagonist. Only the fact that he had mental health issues, I would say, because he has 4 different, very, very different personalities. Now, obviously, it took a guy to actually split into 4 to do this, but he was a troubled child, let's say. So, basically, what happened was this guy, Zark, was one of the best duelists in the world, and he dueled and he had every type of card. He had Synchro, Fusion, Xyz, everything, and he was probably the masterclass in all those forms. He learned every type of dueling or whatever, every form of summoning. And this would make sense in the timeline because it would be straight after Zexal, and all of the people knew about each card, and there was every card in the thing, kind of like the way Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc V is just explaining. We have everything. Now, obviously, they added the new pendulums, and they showed that that's because of this new dimension that was created or whatever. But basically, Zark became evil, and he eventually had the ability that a lot of the protagonists actually have, the ability to create cards. So he was able to create his own card, which was his own dragon, Zark, Supreme King Dragon Zark, and he was able to make his own cards, and he had very powerful magician monsters and dragon monsters, and he had like all the dimension dragons. Obviously, they weren't called dimension dragons because there were only one dimension at the time. So he was able to create monsters and make them real. He had a real power that was able to create these monsters and cause a dangerous thing. He was the pushing force for these robots, I think, or the machines. I believe something to the lines of this. He was able to create. Now, if you watch the episode where it goes back in time and shows you Zark's what happened to Zark, it actually shows Zark turning into this dragon, and it shows the people having these giant tanks and giant robots and stuff to destroy this dragon, and they weren't doing a thing. Like, Clearwing was flying through all of them and destroying everything, and it was a cool flashback type of thing. But they showed that robots trying to beat them. This is what normal people would use. They'd use their military to beat these real monsters. So let's just say they created the real monsters, and years after the kind of world being destroyed by these real monsters, they would create the Mech Lords or something similar to Mech Lords. And in them doing that, this would cause the next generation, or kind of after Zark or whatever, could be like, that's where the Iliaster future is there, and would make no sense with Yuma, but that could be the future where those were kids at the time, and the kids would actually, because Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc V is very based around kids, and these kids could have seen this and grown up with machines, and the machines destroying the world, and then they went back and made Iliaster. It could possibly be. So Zark kind of, I feel like Zark was a very real threat, and that's why the robots were kind of like, if you ever watch Marvel and Sentinels, the mutants were a very real threat to the humans, and they made the Sentinels or whatever. So this could very possibly be the same thing. They made the Mech Lords to counteract these real monsters from ever happening again. But what happened in Arc V was this guy called the Professor and his daughter split Zark into 4 different personalities, creating each one with the Dimension Dragon or whatever, and split the dimensions. And then at the end, all the dimensions formed back together, and Yuya Sakaki became the Zark. So that's why they completely changed the future, which is cool. I mean, they absolutely changed the post-apocalyptic thing from happening, because they got rid of the devil or whatever. That's what they called him in the Japanese. They got rid of the devil and made this new character, which was Yuya, who believes in smiles and stuff and actually being happy with the crowd. So we're all good. It actually follows, with this explanation, it follows in line the timeline perfectly. I mean, there's a little bit a leeway here and there, but other than that, I mean, it seems to be fairly close. I mean, the only problem with all the different characters was they're all a different timeline. So it would assume that all the characters would be the same age, and they're basically, if this would assume that GX, 5Ds and Zexal were all happening at the same time. But I believe with this start over, when all the dimensions were destroyed, these characters could have been long gone, dead or whatever, or older versions of themselves. And when the new dimension started, it's like everybody got a new start, to show like this is the new fused dimensions and everybody is in this world. Otherwise, it would explain that Zexal 5Ds and GX were all different dimensions, which they weren't. GX and 5Ds were they're 100% nearly based into the same dimension or universe or whatever. But it could possibly be the fact that all this time travel and stuff have created many different dimensions, and this was just a way for them to fix it by creating all these dimensions and finally saying we fuse them all together and this is now the dimension. So with that finishing up, we go on to the new one, which is Fujiki Yasaku. So this one basically shows that the robots or whatever, they haven't needed the military, so they've actually focused on virtual reality, and that's plain and simple. So maybe there is, and it should. The funny thing is, it still follows robots. It still follows if the AI actually took over and made the mech lords. It's still a very, very possible future that seems to be it's going to happen, kind of like Terminator Judgment Day or whatever. It seems like it could happen the exact same. I mean, it's very possible that that's why Revolver is trying to stop the AIs and stuff. We don't know yet, but that could be a very high possibility that the fact that that's why they're trying to stop the AI, because AI will create the robots and the robots will destroy the world, and the same thing will happen over again. Iliaster or a new version of Iliaster will go back in time and try to destroy everything. But because it hasn't happened yet, the only time we know of it happening was 5Ds. Because it hasn't happened yet, it's very it's likely that this is going to be another perfect thing. Maybe in the next season or whatever, they do a reveal or something on the timeline. But yeah, let me know what you think of the video, guys. If you like the video, if you think my timeline's all messed up or I'm fucked up, or if you like these videos, I can actually go more in depth and do a proper video and have music and have all cool stuff like that. I could actually go in depth. I didn't know if anybody liked this, but I've been wanting to make this video for a long time. And I'm really liking this series. And let me know if you want me to do summaries and stuff as well of this series. I think we're going into season 2 now. And it's been interesting. I have been watching. I just haven't done videos on them because I don't know, it's not a lot to talk about, and I don't want to do each episode every time. I'd rather do like a season thing, a season talk over whatever. So guys, thank you so much for watching. If you actually watched the whole video, fair play to you. I don't even know how long it is. But yeah, thanks a million. And guys, good luck.